Things they don't tell you about living alone as an older person. Living alone in your later years is often described as a late life gift of freedom. No one wakes you up early anymore. No one reminds you to eat on time. There's no worry about bothering anyone. You can go to bed at 3 a.m., eat breakfast in the afternoon, or sit for hours just listening to the rain, with no need to explain yourself to anyone. Sounds peaceful, doesn't it? But then, in the stillness of the afternoons and the quiet of the nights when no one calls your name, you start to hear a different sound. Not footsteps, not the ticking of a clock, but something deeper, the echo of emptiness inside your chest. And that's when it hits you. Freedom without companionship can feel an awful lot like loneliness. No one tells you this beforehand. No one prepares you for the moment you open your eyes in the morning and realize no one will be stopping by today. No one's asking if you've eaten. No one's waiting for you to come home. What I'm sharing isn't just from my own life. It's drawn from hundreds, thousands of heartfelt confessions I've read, heard, and quietly reflected on for a long time. In this video, I'll walk with you through the quiet corners of life after 60. Realities of living alone that aren't found in guidebooks, aren't taught in workshops, and rarely spoken aloud. Not to scare you, but to bring clarity. And most importantly, to remind you, you're not truly alone on this journey. Let's start with the first truth. When you live alone, it's not just the voices that fade. Even footsteps become rare. No one invites you for a walk. No one waits for you at the park. No one asks, "Did you get outside today?" And slowly, day after day, life slips into silence until your body begins to speak. Aching knees, heavier steps, that dizzy spell when you stand up too fast. Many older adults say they didn't realize how inactive they become until their health began to slip. Stairs feel steeper. A bathroom slipper becomes an unexpected hazard. You're not lazy. You're just missing a companion. I used to think staying still, keeping to myself and not bothering anyone was peaceful enough, but it turns out that silence was slowly weakening my body without me even noticing. That quote comes from Walter, 74, from Oregon. He used to be energetic, gardening with his wife every morning. But after she passed, everything slowed down. No one reminded him to take a walk. No one invited him outdoors. He stayed home more. And eventually, his body responded to that stillness. He shared on a senior forum on Reddit, "I lost interest in walking. It wasn't until my knees ached and I got dizzy standing up that I realized my blood pressure had been rising all along." Walter's story isn't unusual. A study published in the Journal of Aging and Health found that older adults who live alone are 31% less likely to maintain regular physical activity compared to those living with others. Why is that? Because when you live alone, there's no one to nudge you out the door, no one to walk the block with, and the so-called freedom sometimes turns into quiet surrender without us even knowing. Dr. Helen Parker, a geriatric specialist in California, shared this truth. Just 20 minutes of walking a day or a few days of light gardening each week can keep your body flexible, your mind refreshed, and most importantly, remind you that you're still living, not just existing. Without regular movement, the risk of arthritis, heart disease, depression, and even memory loss increases significantly with age. But the good news? Even one small step can turn everything around. Studies show that seniors who stay active can live 5 to 7 more years in good health and independence. An elderly woman in Texas once said, "Walking isn't just exercise for me. It's a quiet message I send to myself. You're okay. You're still here. You still want to live well." Are you moving your body enough each day? If not, what small step could you start with today? Maybe it's just taking out the trash and walking a few extra steps. Maybe it's pulling back the curtains and standing on your balcony to breathe in fresh air. Whatever it is, just starting can make all the difference. If you found this part helpful, please give the video a like, share it with someone you know who lives alone, and subscribe to Golden Wise Elders to stay connected to more stories that speak gently and truthfully to your heart. Now, there's something that almost no one prepares you for when entering life after 60 alone. You no longer have anyone to notice when something goes wrong. Before, a small fall might have meant someone rushing over to help. But now, if you slip in the bathroom, the first person to find out might be an emergency responder. And by then, it could be too late. Take Margaret, 68, who lives in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Tampa, Florida. One night, she stepped into the shower. No phone, no emergency device. No one knew she had slipped and hit her head on the tile. She lay unconscious for nearly 14 hours until her niece in another state, worried after unanswered calls, followed a gut instinct and came over. That's when the family discovered what had happened. Her story was later shared by the niece on a Reddit group for older adults living alone. Hundreds of people responded, sharing similar stories. Some had crawled for hours to reach a phone. Others admitted their greatest fear was lying there knowing you need help, but no one knows you need it. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, over 3 million older adults are treated in emergency rooms each year due to falls at home. Even more concerning, many of those falls happen to people living alone, with no one nearby to respond in time. Dr. Charles Green, a geriatric internist in New Jersey with over 20 years of experience in nursing homes and outpatient care, puts it plainly. A medical alert watch or a motion sensing camera might seem small, but it can be the difference between a lucky save and a life-altering injury, or even death. Without a plan in place, the risks are real. Broken hips, spinal trauma, head injuries from hitting the floor. Lying immobile for too long can lead to heart failure, kidney issues, skin ulcers, infections, and the loss of your ability to recover fully. But here's the hopeful part. With just a few small safety tools, like a smartwatch with an SOS button, an automatic alert system, or motion sensor cameras, you gain a quiet but powerful presence watching over you each day. One elderly gentleman from Colorado shared on a forum, "Ever since I started wearing my emergency call watch, my son sleeps easier. And honestly, I feel loved all over again." Whether you live alone or not, you deserve to feel safe. Not because you're fragile, but because you're valuable. Investing in your own safety is a way to honor your life and cherish the freedom you still have to walk through your own home on your own terms. And you know what? Falls aren't the only hidden danger when living alone. There are quieter threats, subtle ones that wear down your health and spirit over time. Some of them begin in the most unexpected place, your kitchen. Have you ever felt like cooking wasn't worth it because it's just for me? Let's move into the next part of this journey, where we explore something that might surprise you: how eating alone can quietly affect both your body and your soul. There's a side of living alone that people rarely talk about: mealtime. No more clinking of dishes across the table. No more questions like, "What should we eat tonight?" The kitchen suddenly feels too big and too quiet, and you start to wonder, what's the point of cooking when it's just me at the table? That's exactly what Irene, 72, from Ohio, once shared in a Facebook group for older adults. Her husband passed away 3 years ago. Since then, only one chair has been pulled out for every meal. At first, she tried to keep cooking regularly, but slowly, meals became instant noodles, peanut butter sandwiches, or sometimes nothing at all, because, as she put it, it didn't really matter. You'd think cooking is a simple routine, but for seniors living alone, it can be an emotional journey, a back and forth between, is this necessary? And do I even deserve to be taken care of like this? According to the American Geriatric Society, 38% of older adults living alone fail to maintain a balanced diet, particularly lacking in protein, vitamin D, fiber, and calcium, nutrients crucial for maintaining strong bones, immunity, and cognitive function. Irregular meals and poor nutrition increase the risk of muscle loss, osteoporosis, dizziness, and mild cognitive decline. Martha Linwood, a senior nutritionist who worked in Michigan's public health system, says, "Cooking for yourself is a quiet way of saying, I care about me. Even if it's just a small stir fry, a bowl of soup, or a few slices of fruit, when it's made with love, it nourishes both the body and the spirit." She also recommends that seniors keep meals simple but nutritious. Prepare larger batches and portion them out for 2 to 3 meals. This saves energy while ensuring balanced nutrition. One anonymous Reddit user wrote something unexpectedly beautiful. "I used to hate cooking for just myself, until one day I lit a small candle, turned on some classical music, and started cooking like I was expecting a special guest. Over time, I realized that guest was me." And that's exactly it. You don't need someone else at the table to deserve kindness. When you take the time to make a good meal for yourself, you're sending a powerful message. I'm still here. I matter. I'm worthy of love. So even if you're sitting down to eat alone, sit up straight, pour yourself a cool glass of water, and smile just a little. Mealtime isn't just about food, it's about healing. But even after a nourishing meal, sometimes something still feels missing. Not food, but a sound, a voice, a gentle check-in, a reminder that someone is close by. That missing piece is the sound of life. The prolonged silence, what first seemed like peace, can turn into a void that's hard to fill. So let's move into the next part, when silence becomes the hardest sound in a one-person home. where we uncover why many seniors leave the radio on all day, not because they enjoy the noise, but because they can't bear the quiet anymore. There's a kind of sound no one warns you about when you start living alone. It's silence. At first, it feels calming. No blaring TVs, no sudden doors creaking open, no more back and forth chatter, just you and a peaceful house. But then, that peace becomes an emptiness. It doesn't scream. It doesn't make a fuss. It just lingers, soft, steady, and strangely cold. Dolores, 76, from Maine, once wrote on a senior blog, "I'm not afraid of the dark. I'm afraid of the silence. Some nights I turn on every light, the TV, the radio, just to remind myself I'm still alive." And she's not alone. On Reddit, in a thread about what people don't tell you about aging alone, a man named Thomas shared, "I turn on a random podcast every morning, not to listen, but to feel like someone is here with me." A study published in the Journal of Gerontology found that older adults living alone in environments lacking sound interaction, like voices, animal sounds, or music, are 35% more likely to experience moderate to severe depression, especially if they don't have regular social activities during the week. Dr. Rebecca Mills, a geriatric psychologist at the University of Vermont, explains, "Sound isn't just a physical signal, it's a rhythm of life. When a home becomes completely silent, the mind starts to amplify feelings of loneliness. Everything slows down and feels heavier. Familiar, gentle sounds, like old music, a radio hum, or bird song, can soothe the soul and help keep daily life soft, warm, and alive. So if silence ever feels like it's sinking into your bones, don't hesitate to create sound for yourself. You don't have to do anything grand. Just play some soft jazz, tune into a local radio station, or hum quietly to yourself while making dinner." One elder shared this beautiful thought on a forum. "Every morning, I play my old cassette deck and listen to music from the 1970s. Sometimes I feel like I'm sitting next to my late husband again, drinking coffee, just like we used to. Music doesn't erase my loneliness, but it makes me feel remembered." And that's the truth. You don't have to fight the silence. You can reshape it into a safe space, a place where you can be yourself, hear your inner voice more clearly, and speak new words into the room, even if they're just quiet whispers to yourself like, "I'm still here, I'm still living." Because in the end, living alone doesn't have to mean living in isolation, as long as you continue to carry nourishing sounds within you. And you know something else that helps fill the space? Creating a rhythm to your day through habits, small rituals, and gentle structure that give you a reason to rise in the morning. So let's move into our next section. When every day feels the same, how do you keep track of time? Have you ever woken up, looked out the window, and wondered what day it is, or found yourself sipping your morning tea only to realize dusk has already crept in, and you didn't even notice? When you live alone, time isn't measured by clocks anymore. It's marked by the way sunlight shifts across the floor, the breeze through the screen door, the steady breath of a quiet home. Some days stretch so slowly you hear the walls settling. Other days slip by so fast you glance at the calendar and realize it's already a new month, and you've done nothing for yourself. Harold, 79, from New Mexico, once wrote a letter to a local radio program. "After my wife passed, I stopped keeping track of days. The calendar was still there, but I stopped flipping it. 1 week passed, then 2. Then I suddenly noticed winter had arrived. No one had reminded me to grab my coat." According to a survey by AARP, over 60% of seniors living alone report losing their sense of time, especially after retirement or the loss of a loved one. This disorientation often leads to sleep troubles, irregular eating, emotional emptiness, and even mild memory decline due to the absence of anchors in their daily routine. Dr. Lillian Rhodes, a behavioral psychologist for older adults at the University of Chicago, once said, "Time only holds meaning when there's something to look forward to." For those living alone, both their internal clock and emotional rhythm can become unsteady when every day feels exactly the same. But here's a simple truth with quiet power. You can create your own rhythm. Make Tuesdays your closet cleaning day. Water the plants every Thursday afternoon. Call an old friend every Sunday. Tiny acts, but powerful reminders that today is not yesterday, and I still have something to look forward to. Someone on Reddit once shared that the thing that helped them reconnect with the passage of time was caring for an orchid. Every morning, I'd water it, talk to it, take weekly photos. Watching it change reminded me, time is still moving, and so am I. You don't need an alarm clock to know you're alive. If there's even one small thing in your heart to look forward to tomorrow morning, that's the most precious kind of time. And once you begin to regain a sense of rhythm, you may start to feel more grounded, even in the quietest corners of your home. But living alone isn't just about maintaining health, safety, or spirit. It's also about knowing what's truly worth holding on to and finding the courage to let go of what weighs you down. And dear friend, if you've ever had a day when time felt frozen, share that feeling with us. Somewhere out there, someone might read your words and feel seen. Don't forget to like this video, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to Golden Wise Elders, a place where even the quietest moments of solo living can become meaningful when we walk through them together. One day, you decide to tidy up the cabinet in the living room, the one that's gathered dust for years. You think it'll be simple, just sorting things out, but then your hand brushes against an old sweater belonging to someone you've lost. You open a photo album and every picture feels like a whisper from the past, and suddenly you stop. Not because you're tired, but because something in your chest tightens. Decluttering, for someone living alone in their later years, isn't just housework. It's sorting through the decades, through relationships, through things that once meant everything, and now live on only in objects. Linda, 70, from a suburb outside Minneapolis, shared on the Aging Alone forum. I kept everything, from my husband's broken wristwatch to old yellowed letters from my daughter in college. I kept telling myself they're just memories, but the longer I held on to them, the more I felt like I was stuck inside a house full of whispers from days gone by. According to the National Institute on Aging, nearly 52% of older adults living alone feel emotionally overwhelmed when trying to sort through or discard belongings tied to lost loved ones. And for those without nearby children or family, that heavy feeling of being the last one left to remember becomes even more intense. Dr. Mary Ellison, a senior psychology expert in New York, once said, "When we no longer share our living space with others, every object becomes a silent witness to our life." So tidying up is not just about putting things away. It's about letting go of a piece of memory. And yet, because of that, decluttering can be healing if you enter it with gratitude, not guilt. You don't have to throw everything away. Just keep what makes your heart feel lighter, not heavier. George, a gentleman on Reddit, wrote something deeply moving. "I didn't throw out my wife's old coat. I folded it neatly, placed it in a clean box, and tucked in a note that said, 'Thank you for walking with me all this way.' And I cried. But afterward, I slept better than I had in weeks." Sometimes to keep living, we don't need to forget. We just need to reorganize the memories. Put them in a part of the heart we can visit when we miss them, but close gently when we're ready to carry on with the rest of our days. You could start with one small drawer, fold a few towels, wash an old teacup, light a candle and whisper, "We had a beautiful time, didn't we?" Decluttering isn't an ending. It's a way of saying, "I still remember, but I also deserve to live on with a little more lightness." Because after all, living alone doesn't mean living in loneliness. It means choosing what memories you want to bring along on this next stretch of the journey. And once you've made space in your heart, you just might find room for something new to enter. A pet, a new painting on the wall, or a cup of tea on a quiet Sunday morning. Which brings us to our next chapter, one that's not about memories, but about how to create fresh joy. When no one invites you anymore, invite yourself back into life. Do you remember the feeling when the phone rang and someone invited you to a birthday party, a coffee outing, or just to sit in the garden and sip tea together? Those small, spontaneous invitations used to be part of everyday life, but over time they faded. Fewer calls came, loved ones got busy, friends moved away, messages stopped arriving, and even the ones you sent weren't always returned. One day you realize you've been waiting for an invitation that never comes. Leonard, 73, from Arizona, shared a deeply honest comment on a video about aging. "I wasn't sad they didn't call. I was sad because I waited so long, like my life only started when someone knocked on the door." That sense of being forgotten doesn't just come from loneliness, it comes from losing your role, no longer being needed, no longer being someone's center. And yes, it hurts. It really does. According to a report from the National Institute on Aging, 64% of older adults living alone have felt excluded from social life, especially during holidays, birthdays, or when those closest to them are consumed by their own families. Without support or the willingness to adapt, that feeling can lead to social withdrawal, loss of motivation, and declining mental health. But somewhere in the silence of those missed calls, there's a quiet space waiting to be filled, not by someone else's invitation, but by your own. Patricia, 68, from Oregon, once wrote on Reddit, "No one invited me to the movies anymore, so I bought myself a ticket. The first time felt awkward. The second time felt normal. The third time I realized I don't need anyone to enjoy myself." From then on, she built what she called her little joy routine. Saturday mornings at the farmer's market, Wednesday afternoons reading in the park, Friday nights baking cookies, not for anyone else, just because she deserved to have something to look forward to. Dr. Angela Rusk, a senior psychologist at the University of Colorado, calls this the right to create your own joy, a vital life skill that helps older adults maintain mental and emotional well-being. When you know how to create your own joy, you stop relying on the world to give you a reason to live. You become the author of your own life, a simple one, yes, but deeply meaningful. Start small. Buy yourself a flower. Try a new recipe. Write a letter to your future self, or just put on a song that makes your shoulders sway with the rhythm. One elderly man once posted a photo of himself sitting alone at a tiny birthday celebration, a small cake, a cup of tea, and a tilted paper party hat. The caption read, "I wish myself a happy birthday, and I had a wonderful day." See, joy doesn't come from crowds or loud laughter. It comes from knowing you're worthy of love, of happiness, even when it's just you. And when you learn to invite yourself back into life, you realize you're not excluded from anything. You're simply choosing to move at your own rhythm. And that is beautiful. So, how long has it been since you did something fun just for you? A little joy, just yours, might be all it takes to remind you that you're still here. You still matter, and you can still warm your own heart with your own two hands. Part 8. Self-care. When no one's there to remind you, who keeps you tethered to life? When was the last time someone reminded you to bring a sweater? It might get cold. Or asked, "What did you eat today? Did you sleep well?" These simple, everyday questions, once so routine, start to vanish when you're living alone. And one day, you realize it's been 3 days and you're still wearing the same clothes. You open the fridge and find mold on the bread. And you pause, shaken. Not because of the bread, but because no one noticed. No one knew. No one asked if you were okay. Living alone means sharing your space with silence. And sometimes, that silence makes you forget that you're still a person, someone who deserves care, attention, and tenderness. Maria, 71, from Montana, shared in a private Facebook group, "I used to be very particular, wash my face every morning, change clothes, a little perfume, but after my husband passed, I stopped. I thought, who's going to smell it? Who's looking at me? Then one day, I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back." That story resonates with many older adults living alone. According to the National Institute on Aging, NEA, over 48% of people aged 65 and older who live alone admit to neglecting their personal care at least once a week. Not because they want to, but because there's no one to do it with anymore. Dr. Raymond Lee, a senior psychologist at Johns Hopkins University, explains, "Humans, no matter how strong, are social creatures. When regular interaction disappears, we often forget our reason to live. Skipping meals, not changing clothes, losing interest in our appearance, these are warning signs that our spirit is dimming. But just like a fading oil lamp needs only a few drops to shine again, sometimes the one who lights that flame is you. You don't need anyone else to begin taking care of yourself. You only need to remember you are still worthy, not because someone else says so, but because you are. Start small. Wake up 10 minutes earlier to rinse your face with warm water. Put on clothes that make you feel soft and clean. Wash your hair. Moisturize your hands. Light a candle in the evening. Play your favorite music. Cook a meal just for you, as if you were preparing it for someone you deeply love." Henry, 75, from Vermont, once said on a local radio show, "I used to think that living alone meant I didn't need to look presentable anymore. But then I thought, if I don't care for me, who will? I spent my life living for my wife, for my kids. Now it's time I live for me." And you know what? Self-care isn't just about hygiene or nutrition. It's a quiet declaration to the world. I'm still here. I still deserve to live fully, even if it's just me. Set a reminder on your phone to drink water. Write down a list of small joys, like going for a walk, calling an old friend, listening to a favorite scripture, or brewing a fresh cup of tea. Every one of those acts is you, reaching out to keep yourself from slipping away. And if one day you feel overwhelmed, remember, you don't have to do everything at once. One little thing each day is enough. Once you begin caring for yourself again, you'll see Love doesn't always have to come from others. It can bloom right there in your kitchen, from a neatly folded towel, or in a better night's sleep just because you changed your sheets. And when you've learned to take care of yourself again, you might find yourself ready for a new kind of joy. A quiet companion who never leaves, never judges, and always stays close. A pet. There's a kind of friendship that never needs the words "I miss you," because it's always there. Quiet, steady, and real. It's the silent companionship of a small creature. A dog, a cat, a little bird, waiting by the door every time you come home. When you live alone, what you often miss most isn't someone's voice, but the subtle sounds of presence. The soft tapping of paws on the floor, the gentle purr from the corner of the kitchen, or the way a pair of eyes lifts to meet yours every time you sigh. Bernice, 69, from Seattle, once shared her story on Elder Companions. I lost my husband when I was 66. People told me to go out more to find new joys, but I couldn't, not right away. One day, I brought home a little golden kitten, no bigger than a hand towel. I named him Oliver. He didn't say much, just sat next to me every night. But with him around, the house felt less empty. Slowly, I found myself smiling again, pouring milk, chatting with him while I cleaned. Oliver didn't replace anyone, but he kept me anchored to life. That's the quiet magic of pets. They don't erase your sadness, but they help you feel less alone in it. A study published in Frontiers in Psychology found that older adults who live alone and have a pet are 33% less likely to suffer from depression than those without one. They tend to stay more active, sleep more soundly, and exhibit more positive social behaviors, even without anyone else around. Dr. Sandra Liu, a senior mental health specialist in San Diego, explains, pets don't expect you to be happy. They just need you to be there. That alone relieves emotional pressure. You get to be your true self. No pretending, no hiding. You don't need a big animal. Sometimes just a little bird singing at the window can brighten a gloomy morning. A small fish tank, a named houseplant, each one can be a silent but loyal companion. Raymond, 74, from New Jersey, shared in a radio interview, I never believed in getting a dog after 70, but my daughter gave me a little beagle for Christmas. Now I get up early because of him. I walk every day because of him. But honestly, he's the one saving me. When I'm sad, he rests his little head on my lap. And somehow, everything feels lighter. Pets can't replace the people we've lost, but they can become tiny heartbeats that keep ours tender, helping us love, care, and stay connected to life. And here's the beautiful truth. You don't have to be perfect to be loved by an animal. You can be sad. You can be silent. They'll still sit beside you, unwavering and without judgment. So if your days feel too quiet, consider welcoming a small life into your world. Maybe it's a lazy cat, a playful pup, or even a goldfish drifting in its bowl. Because sometimes taking care of something else is the first step to remembering how to care for yourself. And in the end, you're never truly alone if there's a pair of tiny eyes watching you, a tail wagging when you walk through the door, or a soft sound as you settle into your chair. These little things, so small, are more than enough to remind you that you're still needed, that you still matter in this big, quiet world. And once you've found a companion like that, be it a pet, a habit, or a quiet little joy, you may just realize that living alone doesn't have to be scary anymore. In fact, it might just become something beautiful. One day at a time. Lesson 10. Asking for help doesn't make you weak. There's something many older adults living alone will never admit. They often need help, but they don't say it. They don't ask. They stay silent. Not because they don't realize it, but because they're afraid. Afraid of being a burden, of disturbing their children, of being seen as a bother for making a simple request. Geraldine, 75, from Kansas, once wrote on a senior community blog, I didn't call my son even though I had a high fever for 2 days. I was afraid he was busy, afraid he'd feel tired of me always having something. But when he found out, he cried. He said, Mom, you don't call me because you're weak. You call because you trust me the most. And that's what we often forget. Asking for help is not a sign of dependence. It's an act of love and trust. You only ask someone for help when you believe they truly care. According to the American Psychological Association, 58% of older adults living alone in the U.S. have admitted to refusing help even when their health declined, mostly out of fear they'd lose respect from loved ones or be seen as a bother. Dr. Harold Freeman, a geriatric psychologist at Boston University, explains, emotional isolation is the heaviest kind of loneliness. It doesn't come from being alone. It comes from believing no one is willing to help or that you're unworthy of being helped. But here's something powerful. When you reach out and ask for help, you're not only saving yourself, you're giving someone else the chance to show their love. A simple favor could be a moment of bonding. Asking your grandchild to help carry groceries might just be the highlight of their week. Curtis, 78, from Colorado, shared on a local podcast, "I built this whole house myself. I didn't want to ask anyone to fix a light bulb. But the first time I asked my grandson, he was so happy to help. Now he stops by every week. I realized I wasn't just receiving, I was giving too." Exactly. When you ask for help, you're offering someone an invisible gift, the chance to feel needed, trusted, and loved. Think about it. If your grandchild were sick, wouldn't you want them to call you? If your best friend were struggling, wouldn't you want them to reach out? So why would you deny others the chance to do the same for you? You don't have to do everything on your own, and you don't have to be strong all the time. True strength is knowing when to let go and letting someone else hold your hand for a while. Start small. Say, "Sweetheart, I need a few things from the pharmacy." Or, "Could you help me hang this shelf?" One phone call, one message, one glance, and you'll see no one thinks you're a burden. They've just been waiting for the door to open so they can step in. And if there's no one nearby, seek out local support groups, senior communities, churches, libraries, places where volunteers are quietly waiting for a chance to do something kind, because this world still has many good people, and they're just looking for someone like you to help. After all, asking for help doesn't make you weaker. It makes you more human. Someone who gets tired, who feels sad, who has needs, and who is brave enough to let others love them. And once you learn to open your heart, that's when you step into a more peaceful way of living. Less pressure, less pretending, less loneliness. That's when life begins to feel softer, gentler, because you know you don't have to face this whole world alone. So now, we've journeyed together through the quiet corners of a home where someone over 60 lives alone. From the silent footsteps with no one calling your name, to the slow meals with no one asking how your day was, to the old items you carefully sort, each holding a whisper from the past. We've learned how to fall in love with our kitchen again, how a loyal pet can bring light back into a dim room, and how admitting you need help is not a weakness. It's a quiet kind of courage. If there's one thing to take away from this video, let it be this. Living alone doesn't mean you're lonely. Living alone is a chance, a beautiful chance, to relearn how to love yourself, gently, slowly, and more resiliently than ever before. And if tomorrow you wake up, open your window, and hear no one call your name, don't feel sad. Because here at Golden Wise Elders, we are still here, quietly walking beside you. Each video is a gentle reminder, you're not walking this path alone. We're walking it together. If this video made you smile, brought a tear to your eye, or simply helped you feel seen, please click like to let us know you're still out there, still listening, still living, and still so very valuable. Share this video with someone dear, a relative, a friend, or maybe a neighbor. Someone you know is also living in a home with just one chair at the table. And don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell so we don't lose each other in the sea of stories out there. Leave a comment, something real, as if you're writing to an old friend, because here we read every word, and here we truly understand you. Golden Wise Elders, not just a channel, but a warm front porch where once quiet hearts can now quietly sit together without feeling alone.